Is it possible to take a diesel air heater like this HLN Aerolyn 4K here and heat up water in an efficient way so that you could wash your hands, wash some dishes? Is it possible to sort of have your cake and eat it too? That's what we're going to answer today. To give you some background on this question, a few months ago I did a video about supercharging your diesel hydronic heater. I'll put a link up above, using one of these. Now this is what is called an air-to-water intercooler. It's designed specifically for like drag race cars that are turbocharged. Your turbo compresses the air. It goes in this end, and you run a tank of usually ice water, like a cooler of ice water through here, and it cools the warm or hot inlet charge air down, makes it denser. The dense cool air comes out this end, and you have more horsepower. We're going to use it the opposite way. We're going to take the output of this HLN Aerolyn 4K, put it in this end. We're going to run our tap water through the center core here. We're going to take the outlet and put it into our room. Now, don't worry, I can hear you thinking, that seems very restrictive. This was not designed how I originally used it. It's not designed to take exhaust gas and scavenge heat. It's actually designed to take clean inlet air, just from a turbo. And it's not very restrictive at all. In fact, it's fairly free-flowing because it's a high-performance part. So it shouldn't cause too many problems. I have some interesting thoughts about this. I'm very excited about it. First question I want to know is, how much water does this thing hold? Because if you think about it, the way I sort of see this operating, this would be, let's say, under your kitchen cabinet. Your diesel heater would be off to the side, plumbed in. You have some amount of water that lives in here. You turn the heater on in the winter, it starts producing hot air, and most of that hot air in the beginning will go toward warming the contents of this intercooler. Once this is warm and up to temperature, it's no longer a heat soak. Then you will start outputting warm air to your room. And once you've reached that point, that stage, you can then start extracting some hot water out of this to wash your hands up in the sink above, or maybe enough to wash dishes. We're going to find out what sort of flow rate this supports. And when I tested this previously, I'll put a link up here, on high, this was producing an output temperature of upwards of 100 degrees Celsius. So 200 degrees Fahrenheit was what I measured at the outlet. So this is going to be some serious hot water. You have to be careful not to scald yourself. So just keep that in consideration. I think this might work. Let's get the test bench set up and let's find out. I'm excited. Okay, I have absolutely brimmed the center core of this with water. Let's measure and see how much it holds. Gotta slosh it back and forth to get everything out of it. It's got those channels in it. Okay, that's 90, I want to say 99%, 98%. It looks like 1 1/2 liters. There you go. That's the 2 liter mark. That's the 1 liter mark. 1 1/2 liters. That's good. I like that result. That tells me that you could extract 1 1/2 liters of water from this once it's up to temperature instantly before you saw a drop in water temperature. So yes, that's serviceable. Let's get this contraption set up and running. Let me walk you through the setup here. I have the HLN Aerolyn 4K mounted to the bench, installed in your typical fashion. I've already turned it on and I'm letting it warm up and prime and get going. I'm using the manual controller. At the moment, we're not weighing the fuel or taking measurements like that because that's not what this test is about. Over here, I have our air-to-water intercooler. and it's already plumbed into a bucket of 5 gallons of cool water, and I've got a 12-volt pump on this. I've already cycled it and primed it so there's no air in this, but it is not connected to the diesel heater at this moment. We're gonna let the heater fire up and start producing some good heat, and then I have a connector here that will run between the two units. And I've been getting a lot of flack for not insulating my heat exchangers as you would in the real world, so I've got some insulation from the firewall of the bus, and I'll just put that on the big side of the intercooler to help maintain heat. There's that, and let's let the Aerolyn get primed and running, and then we'll take some temperatures. Right now, before we start the test, the heat exchanger body is 22.8 degrees Celsius. 22.4. We're going to just say 22.5, 22.5, so about 22.5 degrees Celsius. The bucket of water shows 21.6 degrees C. I currently have the heater on max. 58 degrees C. Starting to really warm up now. 60 degrees C and climbing. I want to let things stabilize, and I want to get a good measurement of what the output is temperature wise before we connect it to the intercooler. We're at 93 degrees C, 95 degrees C, just shy of 100 degrees C. Let's connect it up and let's start monitoring temperature. I'm going to start a timer as soon as I connect it. Here we go, timer started. Right now the output of this is 22.6, 22.5. So we're dropping across this heat exchanger from 100 degrees C or 93 degrees Celsius to 22. It is extracting all of that heat, doing a fantastic job. We still have a lot of good flow here. I can still feel it. I can still feel the output of this. Ooh, I can feel that a good 6 feet away. Oh yeah, at least 8 feet away. So I'm not worried about restricting the flow on that heater. I'm approaching a minute 30 in. Back here we're at 61 degrees C. On this end here, 27.8. So 28 on this end, 68 on this end. So about a 40 degrees difference. Sort of my guide is once this reaches close to the temperature we had, once it gets in the 90s, then I'll know that this is heat saturated. Currently our output is 28.7, 31, so it is climbing. Starting to feel some heat coming out of it now. 2 minutes and 16 seconds in, it's actually heating up pretty quick. (79 degrees C on this side, 39, 38 on this side. Still climbing. When I told you I could feel this output. Ooh, 10 feet. I am 10 feet away. I can still feel it. So I don't feel like it's restricting. Yeah. Now there is no vent on it. It's just open, but easily 10 feet. I can feel it coming out here. I think we're in pretty good shape. 4 minutes, 20 seconds in. Let's see how we're doing. 85, 86 degrees C here, 55, 55 here. Our outlet is putting out 50 degrees C. The air coming out is 50 degrees C. I don't have a sink hooked up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly allow some water out and measure it and see what sort of temperature. And I'm going to use my thumb to stop it. The water's 22.1 degrees C. That is the temperature of the water in the bucket. So that's our source, 22 degrees C. I'm going to turn this pump on real slow, cover it with my thumb. All right. 24, 25, 32. That's hot. I cannot. I could not hold that anymore. That was 55, 56, 57. I'm sure there's more water in there. Let me get a bigger vessel. The heater has turned off. It reached its endpoint of 35 degrees C for the room, so it has stopped. I have pulled, that is 34 degrees C. That is 2 liters at, well, it ended up being 53 degrees C. That's hot. That first test was seriously flawed, and here's why. The heater, I had the thermostat too close. The controller was sitting here on the bench, and so the heater raised the workbench up to about 30 degrees C and the heater turned off. So that was about 8 minutes in, and this was still very hot. So I managed to pull 2 liters of water out of this, and the water I was using my thumb to control the flow just to sort of see what it would do, and the water got too hot for me to handle. Too hot to handle. Too cold to hold. No, it was too hot to handle, so I had to dump it. But 2 liters, and that's the initial volume in the hose, was cold. And the 1.5 liter that was in the heat exchanger dumped out behind it and ended up with a total, for 2 liters, the total temperature was 56 degrees C, which is hot enough to wash your hands, hot enough to wash dishes. I don't know if that tells us much. So what it tells you is, when the system's running and up to temperature, you will have at least 2 liters of what I would call scalding hot water available to you. I really think that if I was going to install this system long term, I would want a mixing valve coming out to where your pump fed in cold water, and then this hot water on that side, because I think this has the potential to heat water up to 90 degrees C or higher, and that could potentially scald you. You'd have to be very, very careful. I do want to get the system running again. It's currently warming up again. Let this heat exchanger really soak up some heat. I should say intercooler. It's the same thing. Heat exchanger, intercooler. I want to let it soak up some heat, and then I want to very slowly, I'm going to put a valve on the water line so I can remove my meat out of the system here. And I want to slowly let some water out, and I want to see what sort of temperature it can maintain over a slower release over an extended period of time. Yeah, that's the plan. We'll see what happens. Been running now for a few minutes. Starting to put out some heat on this end. 67 on the top here. 93 degrees C on this backside. Sort of 87 in the middle. 71 on this end. This water is going to be incredibly hot. Incredibly hot. I think we're ready to do a second pull here. Yeah, we're starting to generate heat in our room. This is pretty warm here. 76, 80. Starting to get 80 degrees C. This is going to be really, really warm. I've got a much larger vessel here and a valve. Let's see. We might even start having some water boil. It's looking like it's possible. Let's see if we can Okay, the water in the bucket is 23.8. 23 point, basically 23. Our water coming out is 80, 82, 85, 79, 72, 71, 70, 69, 58, 57, 51, 48. Starting to really fall off now. 45, 41, 39, 37, 36. So right now, if we don't touch anything, we're putting 23 degrees in, we're getting out 30. 23 in, 30 out, and it's dropping. It's starting to cool off. .5. That is nice warm water. I could wash dishes in that. And that's at least 2 gallons. We got 2 gallons of usable warm water. Well, I have good news and I have bad news. Good news is I just started an efficiency test. I wanted to see exactly how many kilowatts of energy is being dumped into the fluid, and just to sort of see how efficient this system is. I don't expect miracles. That's the good news. Bad news is the test is immediate failure. I believe this heater on high has started to overheat or trip a cool down, because it is stopped performing and it's cooling down now. I don't think it has anything to do with the intercooler, because the intercooler right now is cold because we're running cold water through it, or back pressure from the intercooler. I just think this is not used to running full tilt for extended periods of time. I think because of the way this thing is performing, I'm going to stop. I'll give you my thoughts on this idea. It's a cool idea. I actually quite like it. That's why I was excited to test it. We're using something that, in a way, was not intended. And I feel like we don't risk any damage to the heater itself because of the low resistance that this intercooler has, as far as air resistance. I don't think we're going to cause any damage to this. I do see some potential risks. One is this intercooler is going to become extremely hot, physically hot. You would need to insulate it with like rock wool. You know, if I did have this under my kitchen sink, I would have rock wool insulation all around it to protect it from getting, from surrounding things getting too hot. Secondly, I believe with this particular heater, others probably as well, the intercooler is going to get hot enough to boil water. That's not good. You're going to actually have water inside of it. If you turn your heater on and you just want to warm your van or your rig and you're watching a movie and you're not going to wash your hands or dishes, you have water sitting in this intercooler. And this heater has the capacity to put out 90 upwards. I measured over 100 degrees C on the output last time I tested this heater. So you, in theory, could have a intercooler full of boiling water. Now, you also have the possibility of what's called a thermosiphon. A thermosiphon is where warm water naturally wants to rise. If this is below your sink and you have a loop connected to your water tank or something like that, you could inevitably or inadvertently create a thermosiphon where this is slowly heating your water tank, your plastic water tank, which is not intended to be raised to 60, 70, 80 degrees C, you could have a problem there. Then there's a safety factor. You go to wash your hands, even if you're using a foot pump, a slow pumping mechanism, you turn the hot water on and don't mix cold with it, and you start pumping it, it's going to output scalding water. That is that's a big concern. So how would I use this? How would I use it safely? If you want to keep it simple, I don't know how you would avoid creating boiling water within this. Maybe, and I haven't looked this up. I bet, and HLN may make this, I bet a heater manufacturer has a Y valve. Or you could make or buy a Y valve, a T valve, a manual valve that you could direct the flow of this into your rig when you want to use it to heat the rig. But when you're like, I'm going to wash some dishes, we're done with dinner, I need to make some hot water, you would turn the valve and now direct the flow through this, still slowly providing heat for your rig, but the bulk of the heat in the beginning goes into your water. And then you would have to be cognizant. You'd have to be an adult and tend to this. This system is not a fail-safe system. This is a failure system if you don't tend to it. I could see this reaching boiling point. I could see it burning people. So recommended? No. Can you do it? Yes, with precautions. Yes, you can do it with precautions, but I would not say it's an easy solution. I think it could run away with you as far as, water starts to boil, thermosiphons. Yeah, it's a fun experiment. And if you want to toy with it, go for it. But just think, anyone that comes in your bus or your van that wants to wash their hands, you have to tell them and warn them that potentially there could be a very hot, there could be 2 liters of very hot water below the sink. You have to if my niece was on the bus and she petted my dog and then wanted to wash her hands, and I didn't think about it, and she went to wash her hands and 90 degrees C water came out and hit her hands, it could scald her. I would be heartbroken about that. So there's ways to do it. Maybe with if you had to do check valves, stop a thermosiphon, a hot water mixing valve, a temperature mixing valve. Yeah, that's it. I'm Jason. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll do it again.